hallucinations, oh steam defenders. Here we are, vaping with Uncle JoeJoe, and as promised, the TFV4. I'm not going to go through all the trouble of breaking it down, because I mean, what's the point? We all know how to break down a tank. You just unscrew the top and there you go. This thing, right now the one I am using in here, is the quad coil, which is 4 coils stacked on top of each other in what's called a stovepipe configuration. Gives you a massive amount of airflow, but it does take a massive amount of power. Now we're sitting on top of a Segele 150 to 130 watts. 0.1 ohms and 4.8 volts. As you can tell, massive amounts of vapor production. As noted, I don't care anything about such things, but hey, I'm all about the flavor. Flavor is phenomenal. Now, as a general rule, I'm not terribly impressed with Smok products as far as their electronics. I know a lot of people that own them. Also, most of the local vendors won't even touch Smok electronics because of that fact. Sorry, stepping on toes there, but it's the way it is. But this tank actually is pretty damn good. Now, you get this giant vape man, which is really nice. It's also really good. And the reason I think they made it so big is a very practical reason. It goes well with the big tank, and also because of the way this thing fills, which is hinged and it slides, which is really cool. And the thing about it is, with this vape man, you put it up and it keeps it from doing that, so if it's in your pocket. Now, you do have a white gasket in here, and you get an extra one in your box in case you booger this one up, lose it, what have you. You've got a replacement on hand, which is really good. Had the original one, when it came, had a tri-coil in it. It lasted about 2 days before it popped. So I went to the quad coils, because I bought a pack of quad coils with it. The quad coils, on average, were lasting anywhere from 3 days to a week. There was no sing, no rhyme, no rhythm. One coil would last, the first coil I put in there lasted 3 days, it popped. Swapped it out, put in another one. That one lasted 3 or 4 days and it popped. Then I got one that lasted almost 2 weeks. Then it popped. Then I got another one that lasted again over 2 weeks before it popped, and now this is the last one that I have. I ordered some, but they haven't come in yet. And this one's been in there for a little over a week. So it's kind of hit and miss. Like the UL crowns, every one I've put in there in my UL crown, every one of those has lasted for at least 2 weeks. Every one of them so far has been going on for 2 weeks. I've only used, in the time, I've used well over almost 3 times as many coils in the TF as I have in the crown. Taste and flavor wise, personally I'd stick with the UL crown because of that. The flavor is there. I mean, they're pretty much equal on everything, except for the fact that crown coils tend to last. And that's the only real con I have on this tank. Now, it is top fill. I will give you some advice. When you open it, close it partially so that when you're drilling, because what will happen is you'll move that little white washer and it'll bunch up when you try to close it. So that can be a bit of a pain, because when you're putting your drip tip in there to squeeze your juice or drip your juice, whatever you've got, eyedropper or a bottle, unicorn bottle, what have you, you can actually move that little washer and it'll unseat itself. And when you try to close this, it'll bunch and it'll try to pop out of there. So if you just close this partially, that'll keep everything in place and you don't have to worry about that. It's no big deal, just a little thing I'm going to pass on. Now, the quad coils, they're huge. Those of you who have guns, they look like a 45 ACP round. They really do. They're that big. They're ginormous. They're roughly twice the size. They're easily over twice the size of the Goliath coils, and they're hella bigger. They're twice as tall as the UL crown, and that's a small con for me, because as you'll notice, you can see here how tall that coil is. It's 3/4 of the tank is coil in height, and as the juice gets down below the top, down to about halfway and down, it starts wicking slower because it's having to pull the juice into the coil and up, and that's a slower process than just pulling it directly out of a juice pool. And that's a problem to me because the height of the coil makes great vapor, don't get me wrong, but again, wicking, it's not quite as bad if you're running tank juice, which would be like a 60-40, maybe a 70-30, but your 80-20s, I have noticed that this thing does tend to wick a little slower. The lower it gets, the slower it wicks, which is true with just about all your tanks, because pressure does play a bit of a part in it, but still, this thing does tend to have a hard time keeping up once it gets down around the halfway mark and lower. I've noticed a real difference in the way it wicks. But again, as far as flavor goes, oh God, yeah. Now your drip tip is kind of a neat thing. You have adjustable airflow on your drip tip. You can turn the thing here just like you can on the bottom here to introduce more air up here for a more airy draw, which comes in handy because sometimes different juices, I like them a little warm, but I don't like a really hot vape, so sometimes I will introduce a little bit more air up here, but it's not needed unless you want it, but it's a nice thing to have. And again, I'm running this at 130 watts, 4.8 volts, 0.1 ohm, quad coils. This is straight Sigeli 150. I just got a little J-wrap on it, but this is an old, this thing's probably a year old. That's why I love Sigelis. They just don't die. They just don't. All in all, though, I'm going to tell you what, if you're looking for a good solid quality tank that's going to give you great flavor and ginormous clouds, this is a killer tank. It really is. The only con, as I said, is the coils tend to wick slower as they get down lower, and you're hit and miss on quality on those coils. Q&A just ain't all it should be. A Smok never has been. Sorry, that's just the way it is. A lot of people have bought the X Cubes and they love them at first, but the camp that hates them grows because the lights go out. I know one guy said his screen went out. Everything works but the screen. He said, I can't tell what the hell I got in there. I don't know how much battery I got, what power, I don't know, nothing. Might as well be a hex ohm at this point. And then finally, I think last time I talked to him, he said, yeah, he took it back because he quit charging. Just would not charge, which seems to be a problem with Smok. But Smok and Cloudpour, that's their problem. They just have established that as a reputation. Now tanks, on the other hand, this is more of an engineering, dealing with metal and stuff. There's no electronics in here to booger up, no connections. So technically speaking, they're a little bit easier to manufacture. It's very heavy stainless steel. It's well made, it's well put together, good thick Pyrex glass as far as your tank goes. It's good, solid quality product. The only problem I have, as I said, is the coil longevity. Out of the coils that I had out of a box, I think there were 5 of them in the box. The tri-coil that came with it popped in the first, I think I had 2. One of the first tri-coil, I think you come 1 in it and 1 in the tank. The one in the tank popped for the first day. I didn't make it till it was later on that I got it in that morning about 9:30. By around 4 o'clock that afternoon, my coil had popped. Kind of pissed me off. I popped the other tri-coil in there. That one ran that night and most of the next day, and I think it lasted about 3 days and popped. And after that, I put quad coils in there and run through 5 of them. This is number 5 here. Most of those last anywhere from 3 or 4 days to 2 weeks. You know, with 5 tanks, I should be able to get at least 2 weeks out of a coil. I should. The Goliath coils, hell, I'm getting a month out of them. Now, this thing makes more vapor and more flavor, but then again, it takes a hell of a lot more power. So that's another offset. If you want this tank, you're going to need around 150 watt mod. You really do, because you're going to need to hit it with at least probably 100 watts to really get this thing to perform. Especially if you're running the quad coil, because 4 coils takes more power. Just how it is. You can't get. I mean, you can do 50, but it just doesn't work worth a flip. You really, to make this thing shine, you need to get up 100, 120. Like I said, I'm running 130 watts in here at 4.8 volts. That's a significant amount of power for a tank. As a little extra, don't get hung up in the numbers game. Don't. It's kind of like this, the late great Carroll Shelby said about cars. Horsepower sells cars, torque wins races. It ain't the power that you got to worry about, it's the flavor. Does it make flavor that's good enough for you? Does it make clouds big enough? If you're looking for cloud chasers, you're going to get tanks like this with a lot of power. If you're just looking for flavor, you can go with a Goliath too and get probably, this is a 5-star flavor tank, you're going to get 4 out of the Goliath. But you're only going to use 40, 50 watts, 30, 40, 50 watts to do it. You know, half to a quarter, half to a third of the power, you see what I'm saying? Which, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you shouldn't buy this tank, just that don't get hung up on numbers and, oh, this tank will take 100 watts where this one will only take 50 and think that means this tank's going to be 10 times better. It's not. It's really, really not. It's going to depend on the coils, the way the whole thing's set up, the juice. It's going to a lot of things determine it. Don't get hung up in the numbers game, because that's all it really is. That's what it boils down to. You know, this car makes 300 horsepower, so ours is going to make 325, and it's going to be 1,000,000 times better. Not really. It's kind of like with a car. You know, 20 horsepower ain't anything to get excited about. It really ain't. 20 watts, 25 watts really is a difference, but like I said, the Goliath 2 makes great flavor at 50 watts. This one needs 100 watts. Is this one better? Yeah, but you don't need as big a device to run it. So there's pros and cons to everything. So if you want a great tank and you want something that'll handle the power and make some clouds, put this one on your list. Again, personally, I would prefer, I'll take the Crown, and that's based, and it's 8 o'clock at night and the damn phone's ringing off the hook. You gotta love it. But that's what you do when you work out of your house. Alright, that's it for me. I'm out of here. Wanted to make this one kind of short, not drag out no 30-minute video on the TFV4. It's a great tank. It works just like every other tank with a screw-in coil. You also have an RDA base, which I don't have yet. I meant to do it, and I just completely forgot when I ordered it. I just ordered the extra coils and forgot to get the rebuildable deck for it. I'll get that. And if somebody wants me to, I'll do a thing on that. Next up, we're going to do is going to be the UL Crown. And after that, I'm going to hit that MX tank, the new MX Mutation X tank. It's kick-ass too. So until next time, y'all be blessed.